Today marks an extraordinary moment in contemporary foreign policy, a rupture in the long-standing diplomatic choreography between Britain and Israel. The Prime Minister has invoked the intolerable suffering of Palestinian civilians in Gaza and suspended trade talks with Israel and imposed direct sanctions on key individuals and organisations tied to settlement expansion and military actions. It's the first time in decades that the UK has publicly taken such a sharp and punitive stance against its traditional ally in the region. To begin with the precipitating factor, Gaza, the images and statistics emerging are beyond harrowing. Over 53,000 Palestinians are dead, many of them women and children. A complete blockade of aid, food, medicine, fuel, maintained for nearly 3 months. Babies, we're told, at risk of starvation within 48 hours. And in the House of Commons, the air was thick with moral urgency. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, denounced Israel's conduct as morally unjustifiable and monstrous, condemning the far-right rhetoric of Israeli ministers, who spoke openly of cleansing Gaza and relocating its population. This is no longer the measured language of diplomacy, this is the vocabulary of rupture. The UK has acted accordingly. Trade negotiations begun in 2022 are suspended. Sanctions imposed on settler activists, including Daniela Weiss, and on groups perpetuating violence in the West Bank, have been imposed. And the Israeli ambassador was summoned for what one might call a diplomatic dressing down. But what is most striking is that this is not simply Britain speaking, it's the UK, France and Canada in a rare tripartite condemnation. It is even the United States, under President Trump no less, whose recent Middle East tour conspicuously skipped Israel altogether. That diplomatic cold shoulder speaks volumes, or should. And now an extraordinary intervention from within Israel itself. The former general and opposition leader, Yair Golan, has declared Israel is on a path to becoming a pariah state like South Africa once was. That is a line that cannot be unsaid. He continued, a sane country does not kill babies for a hobby. His words are brutal, but they're not uninformed. Golan has served in combat. He knows the horror of war. His is not a cheap slogan, it's a moral exclamation. Netanyahu, as ever, was quick to respond. He called Golan's remarks incitement and insisted that the Israeli Defense Forces remain the most moral army in the world. But it is precisely this moral framing that is under collapse. Golan sees a government he describes as filled with Kahanist types, men without wisdom or morality, whose actions are appalling. And what we're witnessing is not merely a diplomatic disagreement, but a structural fracture in the post-1945 moral order. For years, Israel positioned itself as a diplomatic outpost in a hostile region, and that claim now rings hollow to many, as Gaza's children starve and humanitarian workers are killed by airstrikes. Britain's decision is not without its critics. Priti Patel suggested that such sanctions only embolden Hamas, but this argument sidesteps the core question: how can we, in good conscience, maintain normalised relations with a government pursuing what appears to be a scorched earth policy? The UK government has answered no for now. And yet one must ask, is it enough? Britain's arms exports to Israel remain largely intact. Hundreds of licences continue. Only a few dozen were suspended last year, and sanctions have not yet touched Israeli ministers like Itamar Ben-Gvir or Bezalel Smotrich, whose rhetoric teeters on the genocidal. The decision to suspend trade talks and sanction Israeli actors marks a watershed, a moment when words of concern become action, however limited. Whether it's too little too late remains to be seen, but one thing is clear. The UK under Starmer and Lammy has placed its moral flag in the sand, and Israel now faces a crossroads. It can dismiss its critics as anti-Semites and carry on, or it can heed the voices of allies and dissenters alike, including its own generals, who warn that the present course leads not to victory but to infamy. As Yair Golan put it with haunting clarity, these actions are unconscionable. This is dangerous to our very existence, and if history teaches us anything, it is that a state which abandons its conscience will sooner or later be abandoned by the world.